It's a rainy evening in the Grand Tetons, and tomorrow I'll start the Teton Crest trail. In this video, we'll hike to Marion Lake, where I'll set up camp and wake up to see 4 animals outside of my tent. Next, we'll hike out through mountain flowers and have a staring contest with a marmot. And on the last day, we'll have a run-in with the giant of the forest. Finally, we'll go over how to do the trip and talk a little bit about gear. But for now, let's start walking on the top of the Teton Crest. Sitting silently on the rock is the yellow-bellied marmot. There are 15 different species of marmot, but all 15 will watch you like a judgmental Italian grandma sitting in a second-story window. And this amazing one is no different. The best part about staying in Alabama Basin is that you wake up just under Hurricane Pass, where you get to see this. Grand Teton on the left and Middle Teton on the right. Near the end, an 800-pound bull moose was resting in a clearing. It had been sitting there already for 4 hours, quietly waiting out the midday heat. This is the boat that takes you across Jenny Lake, and that ended about 13 miles of hiking from Alabama Basin to Jenny Lake, and that was the end of the trip. So you can see from this trip, it wasn't very high mileage, which is kind of what I needed. And especially, and this leads into the first, why would you do this trip? If you need a high reward, low to moderate effort hike, this is one for you. I needed it. I had just passed physical therapy boards about 6 months prior. I was really kind of out of shape, and this was my first hike of the summer. I did this in 2022. So yeah, that's one of the great reasons to do this. When you start at Jackson Hole Ski Resort and take the tram up, it takes off a huge amount of effort to the beginning of the trip. After you get to the top of the tram, I think it was 8 miles, 9 miles, and then 13 miles for the last day. That's a very doable trip. The next reason why you do this trip is what you saw in the very first clip and on the backside of Grand Teton and Middle Teton, and that's the prominence of the mountains. There's no mountains in the lower 48 that are as prominent as the Grand Tetons, and prominence is like an official geography or topography term where it means how tall is the mountain in relation to everything around it. So if you've ever seen and been up close to Rainier, if you've ever been close to Mount Shasta in California, those are very prominent mountains, and it just makes for great views. I think another reason why you do this trip are the great parks that surround Grand Teton. So of course, just to the north is Yellowstone. So if you were to do a trip here, you could get Yellowstone, Grand Tetons, and then pair it up with either the Wind River Range down south, if you want a little bit more remote feeling or less people, or if you wanted to do just a half a day's drive to the north, you could get to Glacier National Park. The last why you do this is Jackson itself. It's got great wilderness taxis. It's got great infrastructure, good restaurants. It's a little expensive. I'm going to put links below to the kind of more expensive place that I like to stay, but I've been to this area 3 times. I've also stayed in the free places. So I'm going to put links to just free camping, almost free camping, and then I'm going to put my favorite hotel down below. So let's go now over the how to do this trip. So you can of course get permits for this online. I've never actually been that organized, so I always end up going to this spot to get walk-up permits. You're going to get there early, around 6 a.m. There's going to be climbing people there, so if you get there and there's a line, don't worry about it. Some will be hikers, some will be alpinists looking to do Middle Teton, Grand Teton, things like that. But get there early. There's always been people surrounding me that want to do similar trips that I do. But the good thing about this area is no matter what you get in terms of permits, it's usually going to be a good trip. So next, what I used to navigate on this trip was alltrails. I've been using alltrails for years, really like it. About the only bad thing about alltrails is that you need to add about 10 to 15% of mileage to it, just the way the pins are dropped and things like that, how it marks your time, how it marks anybody's time. It's just not quite accurate. So if it says 10 miles, think of 11 to 11.5, maybe even 12 miles. Another good thing about alltrails is that you get a really good sense of the vertical gain, the mileage, the vertical drop, where sites might be, where water sources might be. So it's always been a really good tool to organize the trip. Okay, let's go over one of my favorite topics, which is gear. Gear is the tools that you use to do this trip. For those who don't know me, I'm an ultralighter, but I'm not a stupid ultralighter. I like to have a fully comfortable setup, but with the lowest weight possible. So you saw me in some of the clips wearing a hoodie, and it was the Mountain Hardwear Air Mesh hoodie. So there's a lot of confusion about this piece. What it is an insulation piece, an active insulation piece. So if you're walking, usually in the morning or in the evenings, and you need a little bit of warmth, this is what you're gonna put on. But the confusion comes, it kind of looks like a sun hoodie, and people online have even said to me, Matt, oh, I didn't know about that. I thought it was a sun hoodie. But if you look at the air mesh on the right versus just a regular sun hoodie on the left, you can see that there's a good amount of loft to it. I typically only use this piece when it's going to get down to a low of 40 degrees. If there's going to be something colder than that, I usually go for Alpha 90, or I may even bring like a synthetic puffy. But this Mountain Hardwear piece made from this material called Octa is perfect for kind of high summer trips. Even more than keeping warm when you're active at 40 degrees, it's also a piece to buffer the rain. So no matter if you're in the mountains and it's 60 degrees and it starts to rain, if you kind of get into a set-in rain, you need a buffer between your rain shell and your skin. So just like the material Alpha, which is very popular as well, you're going to need a shell to pair with this because it is a very breathable piece. You're going to need something to block the wind from it. But unlike Alpha, the reason why I like Octa so much is that the little holes on the outside mean that it resists wind a little bit better. Alpha will completely let wind through, almost 2 miles an hour, 3 miles an hour of wind, just a very little bit of wind through. Octa has some resistance to it, so you can keep it on a little bit longer than you would, say, Alpha 60. The second thing I like about it over Alpha is that it's slightly more durable than Alpha. So that's the Teton Crest Trail, why you do that trip, how you do that trip, a little bit about gear, and if you want to know more about the gear I use, it's down below. But if you just want to see more of the same, click into that video right there.